Hello, everyone. This is me. This is your Run Walk coach. This is Lynn Kanuka from SportMedBC. And I'm super glad you're going to be taking the next 30 minutes to join us. Timberly George is here from City Sports and Physiotherapy, and together we're going to help you keep any of those hopefully minor aches and pains in check that you just might experience from now till even the end of the program and throughout your run walk career. You've got to have some awareness of what you're feeling, whether it's something that needs attention, whether it's something that will adjust to your workload in your training program. So this is webinar number 2 in the SportMed Run Walk series, keeping those aches and pains in check. And this is me over on this side, and many of you I've had the opportunity and privilege to meet you. This is Timberly. Timberly, how are you?
Hi, Lynn. Hi, everyone. I'm doing really well, thanks.
Awesome. Well, we're so glad you could join us today. And I had to put this up. Look at this. This is Timberly George, just returned from a beautiful adventure. Maybe you can tell us what you were up to here.
Yeah, that's me on the left there above the turtle scuba diving. I just got back from the Cayman Islands down in the Caribbean and got to swim amongst some amazing turtles, and I love watching them as they sort of slowly meander through the water. It's quite an amazing sight. Lots of great little creatures down there. Highly recommend it.
Totally another world. It looks fabulous, and I think it's timely that we actually have a turtle on the screen, because when I visit various clinics and run walk groups around the Lower Mainland in BC, there are many participants that actually like to refer to themselves as, we're the turtles. We bring up the rear and we get the job done. And they do, successfully putting one foot in front of the other and completing the program in a way that's right for them. So I want you to know that whether you are moving a little quicker or whether you're moving a little slower, fantastic that you have taken on the Sun Run in Training journey, the Run Walk journey, and in 13 weeks you will be ready to complete 10K. So on one other fantastic note, I have to just reference the Canadian flag there on the right. Timberly George was part of the Olympic team back in 2010, and 4 years later, of course, we just finished an amazing series of events in Sochi, and our Canadian athletes did us proud. And I tell you what, the inspiration that we gained from watching those athletes put their best foot forward, their best effort forward, is what we take to ourselves. Moving and training as we are now in a way that's right for us and feeling fantastic about ourselves. That inspiration is something that you take with you for a lifetime. So how are you doing? I hope you're just like this gal right here, feeling fantastic. Now listen, if you do happen to have some sort of little niggly ache or pain that you're unsure about, the thing I'm going to start by suggesting is that you do have to listen and be honest about what you're feeling. So as a coach, when I visit clinics and when I hear from people, if I hear them say, oh, you know, my shin hurts or my calf hurts, I ask them about their personal awareness scale on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, analyze it every day. A 1 or a 2 on that scale is just a tiny bit of awareness, and that's okay. It's usually an adjustment that will take place in reaction to the load of the training program. So the more walking, the more running you're doing, there's a load on your body, and your body has to adjust. It takes a little bit of time, and you're going to activate muscles and tendons that your body forgot about, and you're going to have that awareness. So pay attention to it. The thing is, if it's going up to a 4, a 5, and beyond, that's when we've got to talk about whether or not that ache or pain is not something that is an adjustment to the training program. It's there and needs some attention. So enter Timberly, active Timberly, somebody who does all sorts of things besides working in city sports physiotherapy, to just go over a number of run walk, aches and pains that can occur as a result of increased load in your workouts. So Timberly, let's just take it away here.
Great, thanks, Lynn. So I'm here, like Lynn said, to talk about some of those aches and pains that are going to potentially occur for you guys, but hopefully we can keep everything in check. We're going to start out a little bit by just talking about the difference between two types of sort of common running injuries. We'll talk about the general management of them, what you can do to sort of alleviate them, and how you should take care of your body sort of after your runs in order to make sure that you keep injury-free throughout the rest of your training. And we'll finish it up by just talking about, you know, when you should keep going and when to stop, which is just sort of follows along line with Lynn's personal injury awareness scale that she just mentioned. So first thing to say is there's two different types of injuries that happen. There's acute and there's chronic. The acute being that one that happened immediately. You stepped off the curb and you rolled your ankle and you felt a snap or a pop and there was an instant moment of injury that happened. You're always pretty aware that these ones have happened when they happen. Those ones happen. We can't always prevent them, but it's the chronic ones that tend to be the things that creep up on the runners more often. And chronic injuries are ones that are caused from that repetitive overuse motion that we do with every step that we take when we're running and walking. So we'll move on to the next slide there.
Ouch.
Do I have, my slides aren't changing there, Lynn. I don't know if.
I think there's a delay for whatever reason in the slide change. I see it. I think I'll try and move them along a little quicker, but I'm seeing acute injury, and there's the ankle sprain. Okay.
Yeah, so here's the classic acute injury. The ankle sprain usually results in some swelling and some possible bruising. This is showing a picture of a pretty significant ankle sprain. So so those are the ones that we can't always prevent. Certainly you have to watch where you're running, watch where you're stepping so that you're not falling into a hole or something, but that's the acute injury, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
I did advance. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, perfect. So,
okay.
So those acute injuries, these are the ones that I definitely first off encourage you just to take immediate care of it. A lot of people are aware of the acronym PRICE or RICE, which generally refers to protecting that injury. So if you've just fallen and tripped and hurt yourself, try to stay off of it. Try to, you know, if you can't actually put weight on it, then you definitely need to get some help, find some crutches, get someone to sort of give you a piggyback ride or something, but definitely protect it as much as you can in those early days, especially the first sort of 72 hours. Similarly, you want to rest it. You don't want to try and walk on it more than it needs to be walked on. You don't want to move it more than it needs to be moved. But once you kind of get it under control, there's a point where we want to do some motion, we do want to do some activity, but things that aren't going to actually aggravate that particular area. So in the case of an ankle, you may not be able to run on it right away after a significant sprain, but you might be able to get on a stationary bike or get in a pool and do some pool running. You want to get some ice on it as soon as you can, and make sure that you just sort of keep that swelling under control and get it looked at. A lot of people sort of take these acute injuries and just go, oh, if I just ice it and rest it, it'll just get better on its own. But I do encourage you to go and get it assessed to make sure you find out the extent of the damage and make sure you start that healing process and the rehabilitation process as quick as you can. The question always comes up of when to ice versus when to heat. Definitely when something is hot and swollen, when it's a brand new injury and you're aware that it just happened, you want to get the ice on it. The ice is just important to control the inflammation process. Inflammation is a normal part of tissue trauma, but we want to make sure that it doesn't get out of control. So those things that are hot, that are red, that are swollen, pain that comes on sort of with a particular motion, those are the things that you want to be icing. But heat isn't a bad thing. Heat certainly has its place. I tend to tell people if you're feeling more of just a stiffness or a tightness in some muscles or maybe in your back or your neck or your shoulders, it might just be because you're holding on too hard with your arms and your shoulders. Heat's a really nice way to sort of manage that. So you can use it to sort of soften the muscles, if you will, to let them get nice and relaxed. You can also use a contrast of ice and heat. We call them sort of contrast baths in order to allow the circulation to get going and help with that healing process again. But definitely don't be using heat on that brand new acute injury.
Right. How about just even simply in response to, in response to training?
Sorry.
Am I losing sound here? Uh-oh. Do you hear me, Timberly?
No, I've got you.
Good.
Got you. Yeah.
Okay. No, there's a lot of...
I can hear you, Lynn.
Okay. There's a lot of talk about using that contrast therapy just in response to a regular training day for no apparent, ache or pain. Let's just contrast. Let's just run some cold water on the legs in the shower and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do that all the time. When I'm away working with athletes and with different teams and stuff, it becomes a requirement that we get the athletes into a pool and then into a hot tub and then into a sort of a cold shower and back into a hot tub. And it's a really great way, and athletes will talk about it all the time, how it feels like it just really helps flush all the bad stuff out of their legs that have sort of built up, all that lactic acid and all the tension that's sort of built up in those muscles. It's a great way to get the circulation going and just to flush it all back up to your heart, so it helps with that recovery. So moving on, we're going to talk about what you guys may be experiencing on a more regular basis, especially as your running and walking careers kind of continue up and past the sun run even. A few different injuries we're going to talk about. We can sort of flip to the first slide there on the runner's knee. That's the first thing that we're going to talk about. Just to keep in mind with all of these injuries that we're talking about here, there's multiple reasons why some of you might just end up with something like runner's knee or IT band syndrome or foot and ankle pains or shin splints. And just because you may have the symptoms that's sort of displaying that you have runner's knee, the reason why you have developed it might be different than the reason why one of your other fellow walkers or runners has developed it. So it's not just a very black and white answer to say this is why you have it and this is what you do to fix it. So keep that in mind, and that's again where I always encourage people, if you're experiencing some of these types of aches and pains, there's probably a reason that it's coming on, and therefore that's why you want to get it assessed by an appropriate therapist, by a physiotherapist, and have them sort of figure out what biomechanically might be causing the problem so that they can keep it under check for you. And I encourage you to do that sooner than later. Don't wait until you get to that 5 out of 5 on that pain scale. Get it taken care of sooner so that you know how to fix it. So the runner's knee that we talk about, the general sort of pain that's in and around the kneecap, which we call the patella, some of the signs you may feel, sort of a dull achiness or a pain kind of right around or underneath the kneecap. People will report that they feel it especially when they're going downstairs or downhill, or even after they've just been sitting for too long and been in a static position. Some of the common causes of it may be to do with you just not being warm enough when you're actually starting your activity. You may not have the flexibility in your quadricep muscles in the front of your thigh. But there's some other biomechanical things that might be going on. You might have some weakness in some of your hip muscles and or your foot muscles. Your footwear might be worn out. You might have just pushed it too hard too soon. So those are some of the common causes. Some of the things, if you're starting to feel a little bit of those signs of that ache and pain around the kneecap, start by asking yourself the questions. Did I warm up well enough? Do I stretch well enough after my workouts? Do I do some cross training to strengthen my hip muscles? What kind of shoes am I wearing? Have I had these shoes since 1975, or are these a brand new pair of shoes and they're really comfortable on my feet? As well, sort of ask yourself what types of surfaces you're running on. Some people have a really hard time on the concrete of the sidewalk, so if that's all you're running on, then try and change it up. Get on some grass, find a park somewhere or a nice soft track, get in a pool and do some water running, and just sort of pay attention to those surfaces, and those can all make a difference for sure. So we'll move on to the next one, which I believe is the IT band problem, the IT band friction syndrome. The IT band is a really big, huge band of a connective tissue, if you will, that runs from the top of your hip near the side of your buttock all the way down to the outside of the knee. And Typically people will say that they feel this specifically when they're going downhill and downstairs. The pain is often on the outside of the knee, sort of on the lateral side, as we say, sort of around the kneecap. And some people will actually say that this is one that comes on initially when they run, when they're not warm enough yet, but then actually as they get better, as they get warmer, it gets better. But however, once you've let this go on too long, what happens is people will start saying they feel this one with every step they take, and it just doesn't get better even if they're really warm. So the causes with this one, going back to the same thing with the runner's knee, sometimes it's a lot of it usually has to do with biomechanics, weakness in some muscles, perhaps in your foot, perhaps in your hip, tightness in your hip flexors, tightness in your hamstrings, potentially if you're doing too much downhill running. So think about where you start your runs sometimes. Some people who live maybe over on the North Shore or in New Westminster, I know often they're having to start their runs by going downhill to get somewhere. So if you can avoid that sort of too much downhill running in the early stages of your running career, then that can help. And then we want to get good control of the alignment of your knee. And that's a really important one to make sure that we're keeping our knees and our hips and our feet in a good straight line. What you're going to do if you're starting to feel that pain on the outside of the knee, especially if it's just in those early days, again, ask yourself those same questions. Am I warming myself up well enough? Am I getting good cross training? Am I strengthening those muscles around my hips? And do I have the strength in order to do a good squat, for instance? And I think I have a picture of someone in one of the next slides of a good squat position versus a bad squat position, which is a good indicator of whether or not you've got the proper strength in your hip muscles. This is another one that usually tends to respond really well to doing some massage, to doing some self-massage. A lot of runners are familiar with massage sticks and foam rollers and stuff, so I'd encourage you to learn how to use those. Here's the picture that I was talking about, the single leg squat. So that's standing on one leg and trying to squat down almost as if you were going to sit on a chair and then stand back up again. This is a test that I use regularly in the clinic with all of my runners, and more often than not I see people coming in that look like the guy in part B there, where his knee is kind of veering inward sideways, his shoulders are sloped on an angle, his hips are sloped on an angle. And that to me tells me right away that you don't have very good strength and control in your hip muscles. So we want you to be able to do a single leg squat that looks very much like the picture in A, where that knee is in a straight line right below the hip and right above the toes of the second and third toe of the foot. The shoulders are level, the hips are level. So practice that. Go home, stand in front of a mirror and see what your single leg squat looks like, and that can become a very good preventative exercise for a lot of running injuries.
We definitely talk a lot about sort of core strength and working with leg raises and squats like these, and just generally you've all been encouraged to consider trying to find an alignment kind of class, whether it be specific like this, specific exercises. Many have said, oh, but I need someone to give me instructions. So whether you're involved in even a Pilates class or a yoga class or something that will help you to strengthen the muscles around these areas like your knees, like your hips, it's going to help your running.
Absolutely, absolutely. So moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the foot and ankle pains. Again, the foot, just like every other joint in our body, our joints are very complex. They're not very simple joints when we really sort of get down to the roots of it. The foot and ankle particularly, there's lots going on at the foot and ankle. But some of the common things that I hear are people saying that their feet are going numb while they run. So I'd ask you the questions of maybe you're tying your shoes up too tight. So, that might be just a simple fix of that. So sort of check the tightness of your shoes. Maybe you're really clenching with your toes while you're running and you're really sort of stiff and tight through your feet while you're running. So think about keeping your feet just nice and relaxed and nice and loose in your feet. If you're if you've sort of checked to see that your shoes are too tight, definitely and you're noticing that the foot's going numb, particularly sort of in around the big toe and the second toe and the third toe. If those are numb and they're staying numb and all of that, again, get yourself assessed. Don't wait to let that progress into something worse. There's a few conditions that could be causing that. Another common one is people get pain in the back of the heel, right where their Achilles tendon attaches into the back of the heel. That's particularly common on the uphill runs. You're really putting a lot of stress on that Achilles tendon when you're having to run uphill. So if you're starting to experience that again, just try and find some flatter surfaces, some more level surfaces to run on, trying to avoid those hills, making sure you're stretching your calf muscles on a regular basis, and not just after your runs, but maybe even through your work day, especially if you're someone that sits at a desk all day. And if you are really experiencing a lot of pain in the back of your heel, and it's sort of even persisting after your runs and just as you're walking around from day to day, try wearing shoes with a little bit of a heel lift in them, so not a totally flat shoe like a flip-flop or the ballet flat kind of shoes that women wear, or the canvas sneakers and stuff. Try and put something with a little bit of a lift and some good support, and that should help a little bit, but definitely get that looked at. Another more common one that we hear about, a lot of people may know the word plantar fasciitis. It's common in the bottom of the foot. The pain sort of exists right near the back of the heel, right where the heel meets the arch of the foot. And very common, people will say that they can feel it first thing in the morning. They jump out of bed and they stand on their feet and they get a searing sort of shot of pain through the arch of your foot. Hopefully this isn't happening to you, but if it is, and if that's the only time that you feel it, but then it gets better as you sort of warm up and walk around from the morning, then you can kind of keep it under control. And a big easy thing to do to keep it under control is to warm your foot up before you get out of bed, before you actually stand up on it. So do some big ankle and foot circles, just pump your feet around and get your foot kind of moving a little bit. Maybe roll it on a tennis ball, roll the arch of your foot on a tennis ball just beside your bed before you actually stand up and put your full weight on it. But again, there's probably a lot of reasons why this is coming on, and we want to sort of address what's happening that's actually caused it from starting in the first place.
For sure. You know, shoot, I think I've probably had every injury in the book here, and I can tell you that it's not a good thing. But one of the things that I tell folks that is preventative, the idea of warming up your feet in the morning, which I've done myself and continue to do so every day, is to draw the letters of the alphabet with your feet from A to Z. That way you've got a pattern. You're not just, you know, you don't have to think about it as you draw the letters of and you've got that continuity of maybe 5 minutes where you're spending that time just to get that circulation going. That's what happens, folks, as we get to be even, you know, middle-aged as I am and further on in our run-walk careers. You've got to take care of yourself in this way. Let's prevent these things from happening.
Yeah, that's right. I like the alphabet one. That's a good one, too. And I think this is the last one we're talking about, which is, I put in quotations here, shin splints. Shin splints is a pretty global term that encompasses a lot of different conditions that could be causing pain in the front of the lower leg. Some of the signs and symptoms you may be getting that could be indicating any one of those conditions would just be pain in the shin area, on the bone or in the muscles, tenderness in that area, swelling in the front of the shin, and or along the sort of edge of the bone or in the muscle tissue. Lots of different reasons why this could be being caused. Again, going back to the biomechanics of things, the biomechanics of your foot, the biomechanics of your knee and your ankle. Certainly if you're just doing too much too soon, again going back into the running surface that you're on, if you're always running on hard surfaces, try and move yourself to some softer surfaces, and get yourself checked out sooner than later with those shin pains, because while some of them might be normal in the very early days, if you've never been a runner or a walker before, if they're persisting for more than, you know, sort of into every single run that you're doing, then we've got a problem that we want to sort of nip in the bud right away. So stretch your calves, warm up, make sure your shoes are good, and get on some softer surfaces.
You know, it helps, just a little old trick is to pick up some styrofoam, the old styrofoam coffee cups, and fill them with water so you've got them handy in your freezer. And then you can, particularly with shins, you've got this nice way to hang on to this icy cup, and you can just run that ice up and down your shins before and after activity, which, you know, again, we're treating symptoms. Hopefully they don't escalate. If they escalate, you need to see a professional, but just some of these little tricks, hanging on to styrofoam cup. Give yourself that ice. Ice is always your best friend in these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so some of the things you can, if you're starting to experience some of that pain, like Lynn just said, definitely getting some ice on it right away. If this is, if you go out for your run this weekend and it's the first time that you have ever started to feel that pain in the shins, then get some ice on it right away, stretch your calf muscles out really well, and hopefully you can kind of keep it under control. Again, if your shoes are really old, you've had them for years, they're probably too worn out, and you need to get something that gives you a bit more support and has a bit more control to them. Stretching your calves is really important, and then also trying to strengthen the muscles of the lower leg, your calf muscles, as well as your foot and your toe muscles. One of my favorite things to get runners and walkers to do, is to start playing with their toes. And I don't mean just like, one little toe, two little toe, and sort of touch them, but see if you can spread your toes apart. See if you can wiggle your toes. See if you can move your big toe and your baby toe independently of your other toes. Probably one of the best little exercises you can do to prevent a lot of these sort of lower leg injuries is get some better control in your toes. So use that one. Try and challenge all of you to go home and try and spread your toes apart. So just to wrap up, we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do after your runs, especially after maybe the longer runs, the one run that you're doing each week that's a little bit longer than the others. But really after any sort of workout, these are really good little tools. Number one, make sure you're hydrating yourself. Have that glass of water. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It doesn't need to be a fancy Gatorade or sports drink or anything, not when you're sort of working out for less than an hour, but make sure you're staying hydrated, and stay hydrated through your day as well, not just right after your run or before your run, but keep hydrating, drinking lots of water throughout your day. Use the pee test if you need to know whether you're hydrated enough, which is just sort of paying attention to the color of your urine. And if it's really bright, strong, yellowy, orange urine, it probably means that you're actually dehydrated. You need to fuel yourself more. Your pee should be very light straw colored. You want to refuel, make sure you're eating well, make sure you're eating healthy. The good old Canada Food Guide's a great way to go, so make sure you eat a healthy diet and definitely get something into your system as quick as you can after you run. That's the best time to sort of refuel your muscles. Realign, that just means keeping your body in check. Check your flexibility of all of your muscles from right to left. Make sure you feel balanced in your flexibility. You shouldn't have one side of your body that feels tighter than the other. So make sure that you're staying good with that muscle length, the muscle tension, and keeping things in line with that. And then rest. Make sure you give yourself your rest days. Don't be running 6 days a week. Your body needs rest just as much as it needs activity. And rest from running doesn't necessarily mean it has to be laying on the couch. Rest from running could be do a nice little yoga class or a Pilates class or go for a light swim or something. But you have to give yourself rest from running for sure on those rest days. And then lastly, we just want to sort of say, sometimes you can move through things. Sometimes you can run through some of these little aches and pains that you might be getting, but sometimes you actually need to stop and get some advice. So certainly if you're starting to develop any pain and it goes away after a couple of minutes or by changing your surface or your speed and you're running in, then you're probably fine to keep on going. Also paying attention to whether it's actually pain that you're experiencing or just the fact that your muscles are tired and they're fatigued from having a workout, and that's very normal, especially if you're new to exercise. So don't worry about that too much as long as that's not persisting. And if you have a pain that comes on one day in a run and then it goes away the next day and it's gone and it doesn't come back, you're probably kind of good to keep going. But any of those pains that are just persisting for days on end after your run, that are always there within your run and during your run, or that are getting worse, by all means get yourself to a physiotherapist and get it assessed as soon as possible so that we can keep you running and keep you moving and keeping you pain-free.
Oh, so that's awesome.
Hopefully that was helpful for everybody, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them by email after the fact.
For sure, and much appreciated that you joined us. Listen, everyone, in a real quick summary, be aware of what you're experiencing in terms of little niggly aches and pains. Remember that if it's escalating, think about seeing a professional right off the bat just to make sure everything's okay, but treat with ice okay? Back off on what's the cause of what you're experiencing. So think about doing some cross-training for a few days if you are, experiencing some aches and pains, and that could mean anything from, as Timberly said, you could join a class, whether it's Pilates or yoga, or specific to your running and walking, jump on a bike and spin on a bike in a gym that doesn't cause any, ache and pain because of the impact of running or walking. There's elliptical trainers and there's deep water running. We'll have more on cross-training in another webinar, but for now, our time's up. There's always way too much to talk about. Thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. Good luck with your program. And I'm looking forward to continuing on with this journey. We're practically halfway through the program. So carry on, stay motivated in this dump of snow we've had around the Lower Mainland. Those of you up north dealing with those cold temperatures, do find a way to stick to the program in a gym with a friend. Stay motivated. And listen, we shall talk to you on email, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.
Good luck.